book, Kingdom Principles for Living the Divine Life. I've been so blessed in sharing this series with you. This is a book that I wrote several years ago, but in teaching it and sharing it with you, I've been getting new insight into the book and new illumination into these 7 kingdom principles for divine living. And so we're grateful to you. So we'll be in week number 7, which starts on page 60 of the book, Kingdom Principles for Living the Divine Life. And so we'll be working with the kingdom principle this week of divine protection. Come on, say with me, divine protection. Affirm it again, divine protection. I am divinely protected by God. And today we're talking about the hedge of protection. The hedge of protection. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart if you are familiar with the Bible speaking about a hedge of protection. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart if you are familiar with that. And we're going to go to the actual scripture that talks about it. It's found in Job chapter 1 and verse number 10. It's not the book of Job, it is the book of Job. Spelled just like Job, but it's Job. Job chapter 1 and verse number 10. It says, and this is from the New King James Version, all right? Job 1 and 10. It says, have you not made a hedge around him, around his family, and around all that he has on every side? Yes, so in this text, Job, who is from the land of Oz, we have not been able to identify exactly where the land of Oz is. The book of Job is the oldest book of the Bible. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart if you knew that Job was the oldest book in the Bible. It is the first book written in the Bible. The Bible is not in chronological order in terms of when they are written, when the books were written. The Bible is in the order of the story. It is in a narrative form that kind of puts the story together. But Job is believed to be the oldest book that is written in the Bible. Some people also believe that Job is more like a parable than an actual story, where you have a story, an earthly story that has a heavenly meaning, and that it was written to answer the question, why do bad things happen to good people? And so that's what the story of Job is. In the original writing, there is not the prologue in chapter 1 and 2. In chapter 1, and there's not the epilogue in chapter 42. So we're not given this whole dialogue between God and Satan in the original text, and you're not given the happy ending in chapter 42. Later, chapter 1 was added and chapter 42 was added to give it a prologue and an epilogue and kind of put it in consciousness. The original story just picks up with this man having all these things happen to him, and he doesn't have any clue as to what's going on, and his friends just kind of come up to him and start giving their input, and it's about his dialogue, his prayer with God, because remember, prayer is a two-way communication between you and God. So that's a little historical background about the book of Job. How many are familiar with Job? Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart. Job experienced all types of challenges in his life. This man, he had so many different experiences. He had the experience of the transition of his children. He had the experience of he had family challenges in his relationships with his children. He also had relationship challenges with his wife, where his wife told him to curse God and die. He had financial challenges with his cattle, where he lost his cattle. He had challenges where even health challenges where he was sick and he had boils growing on his body, and he would cut himself just to get relief from the boils. So he was challenged in every area of our kingdom promises. He had health challenges, he had relationship challenges, and he had wealth challenges. Everything was fine with Job. And then it's like all of a sudden, all these challenges began to happen. The backstory, as is presented with this prologue, is that there's this conversation between God and Satan, and Job is actually recommended for the test, recommended that he is believed to have the conscience that is strong enough to be able to endure all of these things. And in this conversation with God and Satan, as it were, in this text, and remember, Satan is the personification of evil, or the personification of the lower consciousness, or the personification of the ego. And so it's like you know how you have that internal battle between you, your spiritual self, your Christ self, your higher mind, and then your lower consciousness, your lower self, your lower mind, the ego. So that's the battle that Job is in between his higher self and his lower self. And so he's in the middle. All right, because you got the superconscious, which is the Christ mind, and the subconscious, which is the past, where a lot of that ego stuff is. And then you have the conscious mind, which is the current experience that you're having right here and right now. And so he's having this experience in consciousness, and he's dealing with his ego, and he's dealing with his spiritual self, and he's in the middle. And in the story, as it's described, is seen as God and Satan, and he's in the middle, almost like a pawn between these two different energies, or these two different states of consciousness. And so in the text, the ego, the lower self, the Satan, says that, Job can't even really have these full experiences because there's this hedge of protection that is around him, that is around his family, and that's around all of his possessions. So the things that can happen to Job in order to develop his character, for him to be his best self and live his best life, are very limited because it's like this hedge of protection that is around him. And in order for Job to experience the health challenge, the relationship challenge, and the wealth challenge, that it had this negative energy had to get through the hedge of protection. All right, let me say it again. In order for Job to have the health challenge, the relationship challenge, the wealth challenge, it had to get through. This energy had to get through this hedge of protection. And it says that there's a hedge of protection around the negativity. It was impenetrable, that you couldn't penetrate it, that this was hedge of protection. It was all around Job. It wasn't just around Job. It was around his family and around his possessions. We'll get to that tomorrow. But we're just dealing with the idea of this hedge of protection that was around Job. And it opens us up to this idea of the hedge of protection that is around you, and that things don't just happen to you. Sugar, honey, iced tea does not just happen. Things don't just happen to you, but there is a hedge of protection around you. Can you feel that hedge of protection? We started some weeks ago, it's probably months now, when the coronavirus first really hit. We started forming that hedge of protection around us. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart if you remember that ninefold baptism where we consciously created the hedge of protection around us. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart if you remember that. And we would take a conscious moment to breathe, and we would say, God in us, God flowing through us, God functioning as us, God above me, God beneath me, God beside me to my left, God beside me to my right, God behind me, and God in front of me. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart if you remember that. Let me know whether or not you've prayed that outside of us doing it together. But in the midst of COVID-19, have you intentionally formed? It's there, but you're forming it in your consciousness so that you can be aware of it. And so that ninefold baptism is you enacting, activating that hedge of protection around you. And some people have asked me, and I got into a deep conversation with someone yesterday. They said, we see some things with you and your church on Facebook, and you don't have that mask on, y'all don't have gloves on, and sometimes y'all a little sketchy with the social distancing. And I said to the person, I work better on the social distancing because it's not social distancing, it's physical distancing. We'll work better with the physical distancing, but I don't know how committed I am to the mask and the gloves. And I said, because I don't desire to change what I do because of some external force or some external experience. I desire to work from the inside out. And instead of focusing on the external with the mask and the gloves, that I choose to focus on the internal healing. And the Bible says that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, that I'm made in the image and likeness of God. So I was created with divine intelligence. And God knew that coronavirus, bacteria, sickness, all kind of stuff would be in the atmosphere, would be in the air. And what God created me with was an immune system, which is divine intelligence. I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and that my soul knows right well. And so instead of focusing on those external things, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I support people wherever they are and whatever they need to do for their soul's unfoldment. But for me, instead of focusing on the external protection, I desire to focus on the internal protection and to build my immune system. That's what I can control. I can't control the droplets in the air and people, and I'm challenged sometimes to remember, all the details, and I practice them to the very best of my ability. But what I really focus on every day is boosting my immune system, because that's something that I can control. Drinking the water that I need to drink every day, eating healthy, getting my vitamins and my nutrients, getting my proper rest, exercising every day, letting go of stress, which compromises the immune system, and doing all those things to boost my immune, to constantly build my hedge of protection around me, and to speak to my immune system and tell my immune system to function according to the purpose that God made you. And I tell my immune system that God created you, and so I command you to function. So those are the things that I do every day to really focus on my antibodies and antigens to really fight against anything that is out here. So I focus on in here, and then allow what's in here to help out of here. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart if you understand that. And again, I'm not criticizing, I'm not saying anybody is wrong for anything they do. Everybody needs to do what they need to do for their soul's unfoldment. I'm just sharing with you where my focus is, and where I focus my thinking, and where I focus my attention is on building my own immune system. So whatever I come in contact with, my body can fight it, as it has fought all of these other infections and diseases that have been. There's some that I've known about and some that I have not known about. And so that's what I do, and I'm sharing that with you. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, toss it. Do whatever you need to do. But I'm just sharing with you because somebody shared with me that they had some questions about some of my practices. So I explained to them how I build in consciousness this hedge of protection. And I do that ninefold baptism, forming that hedge of protection around myself every single solitary day, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day, because I believe this hedge of protection is something that I can consciously form in my own life. All right, give me some thumbs up, give me some high fives, give me some hearts. And remember, this is not to offend or criticize. I'm just sharing with you what it is that I do. All right? All right, so this hedge of protection, pulley point number 1. This hedge of protection is God's gift. It was a gift to Job to have this hedge of protection. It's like this invisible glass. It's like this bubble that was around him. And I'm telling you that this hedge of protection, pulley point number 1, was God's gift to Job, and it's God's gift to you. It is up to you to believe in the hedge of protection. It is up to you to receive the hedge of protection, and it is up to you to activate the hedge of protection. Let me say it this way. It was God's gift to Job, and that hedge of protection is God's gift of you to you. It is up to you whether you believe your hedge of protection. It is up to you whether you receive your hedge of protection. It is completely up to you whether you activate your hedge of protection. So pulley point number 1, it's a gift. God offers it to you. You can believe it or not. You can receive it or not. You can activate it or not. But pulley point number 1, the hedge of protection is God's gift to you. It is God's gift to all humanity. But it is up to us what we do with this gift that God has given us as a hedge of protection. Pulley point number 2. Well, some people say, well, if it's a hedge of protection, then why did this happen? And why do people get sick? And why do people have collisions, car collisions? And why do people, fall and break limbs or whatever? All right. Just like with Job, just like with you, that hedge of protection is sometimes opened up because there's a greater glory that God needs to receive. Just like with Job, in order for those health challenges, relationship challenges, and wealth challenges to happen. It's like a gate. The hedge of protection had to be opened up for this stuff to come in. So anything that gets through that hedge of protection is meant to be, number one, for God's glory. Pulley point number two is God's glory. The hedge of protection, pulley point number one, is God's gift. The hedge of protection, pulley point number two, is for God's glory. Jesus told, and I was reading this today, Jesus told them with Lazarus, John 11:4. He said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Again, that's John 11:4. And so whenever the hedge of protection is removed, why would the hedge of protection be removed? For God's glory. There's some glory that God needs to get out of the hedge of protection being removed. And God is about glory, the manifested presence of God. God is the everywhere evenly present spirit of absolute good. And sometimes we are not aware of God's evenly present, being the evenly present spirit of absolute good. So that hedge of protection is removed. Something gets in there, like the sickness that Lazarus experienced, the sickness that Job experienced, the conflicts with his wife, the loss of his children, the loss of his cattle, the physical health challenge he was having. Something got through that hedge of protection, but it was a reason. We're not just sick for no reason. We don't just have collisions for no reason. We just don't have health challenges for no reason, and relationship challenges for no reason, and financial or wealth challenges for no reason. It is for God's glory. And so whenever I have a challenge, it is for God to be glorified. With Lazarus, never before had anyone ever been raised from the dead that had been stinking, and rigor mortis had set in for 4 days. That had never happened before. And so God got glory out of this miracle of the resurrection of Lazarus. God got glory out of the healing of Job, the restoration of his marriage, the restoration of his family, the restoration of his finances. It was for God's glory. So anytime that hedge of protection is removed, I can be comforted in knowing that this is for God's glory, that God's glory might be revealed through me, that for the sufferings of this present time, the experiences of this present time do not compare to the glory, the greater good, the greater purpose that shall be revealed in us. Am I saying, no, oh no, I can't get coronavirus. Oh no, I'm saying that I'm boosting my immune system. I'm activating my hedge of protection. And if that hedge of protection, the coronavirus can't just get to me. It's like a gate. It has to be opened up, and that hedge of protection has to allow coronavirus in. And if it comes in, if the hedge is open, then I know that it is for God's glory. There's some glory that God needs to experience in the earth from this particular experience. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart, because we really getting down to the nuts and bolts of it. Because people say, well, why did this happen? Because the hedge of protection was removed. And why was the hedge of protection removed? So that God can be glorified. So pulley point number one, the hedge of protection was God's gift to Job, and it's God's gift to you. It's up to you to believe it, receive it, and activate it. Pulley point number two, what happens when something gets through? When the hedge of protection is removed, it is for God's glory. That there's glory that God desires to reveal through you to the earth through this experience. And pulley point number three, I can rest in the assurance that if the hedge of protection is removed and something gets through, it's more like opened up. I'm seeing a vision of it opened up as opposed to it's gone. It's like it opens up. And if something happens and gets through that hedge of protection, not only is for God's glory, pulley point number three, it's for my good. It's for my highest good. It's for my soul's unfoldment. There's a lesson that I need to learn. There's a blessing that I need to receive. And the only way I'm going to receive it is through this hedge of protection opening up. And so even if it does happen, I have no fear of it. I have no fear of death. I have no fear of health challenges. I have no fear of relationship challenges. I have no fear of wealth challenges, because anything that gets through that hedge of protection was meant to be. It didn't go happen by accidents or chance or happenstance. It's in divine right order. It happened in divine right timing. And I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be with this experience. So these principles build on one another. And so this hedge of protection is opened up. It's removed. Stuff gets through for God's glory and for my good, my highest good. It's either we believe in Romans 8:28 or we don't. The Bible says, and we know. Do you know? Do you remember? Are you consciously aware? And we know that all things, everything without exception, and we know that all things, everything without exception. I'm going to say it one more time. And we know that all things, everything without exception is working together for my good, for my highest good, because I love God and because I am the called according to God's purpose. If there is a divine purpose for my life and I can't transition. That's why Jesus said this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God. Job did not die as a result of the boils. He could not transition because the glory of God had to be revealed. The marriage went through its challenges, but it recovered because there was some glory that needed to be revealed. The highest good was revealed. And so all things are working together for my good. Even what people may mean for evil, God uses it for my good. So I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of anybody. I'm not afraid of any experience of life because I know the truth. I know the kingdom principle of divine protection. Things are going to happen. My soul is going to call for things for God's glory and for my good. And I'm open and receptive to whatever that is. And so I'm telling you today that there is a hedge of protection around you. Pulley point number one, it is God's gift to you. It is up to you to believe it, receive it, and activate it. Pulley point number two, it is for God's glory. That God will be glorified through the experience. And the earth will see another manifestation of the presence of God. And pulley point number three is for your good. It's a lesson in it. It's a blessing in it for your soul's unfoldment. And so I'm encouraging you today to activate your hedge of protection. I am encouraging you today to activate your hedge of protection and to really know that it still happens. It still exists today.